Before I introduce myself, and before I dive into the text for today, I have a question for you. What personal expectations are you putting on God? I want to repeat that. What personal expectations are you putting on God? Hi, my name is Tom. I'm the pastor of the Hills Church, a young independent Christian church meeting in the heart of South Park. When I say South Park, I mean as in the actual park, not the township that's right next door to the park. If you're from the Pittsburgh area, you know where I'm talking about. We meet every Sunday in the park. Some days, when it's warm, we worship outside near a large open hillside that's frequented by hikers and bicyclists, even riders on horseback, and many of them choose to join us for our Sunday morning services. Other days, when it's cold and snowy outside, we meet in a fully restored barn around tables complete with a hot breakfast, warm drinks, and of course, the goodness of God. We're a unique expression of the bride of Christ. And the only reason I bring it up is because what God has created through my church was nothing like the expectations that I had for the sort of church that God would lead me to serve for even a season in life, let alone the past decade. Our passage for today's Lenten lunch devotional stems from Mark chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, "How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They can't, so long as he is with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear even worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins." I love this passage. It's a short passage, just 5 verses long, but like all of Jesus' words, it's packed with such depth and beauty. As Jesus is known for doing in these 5 short verses, Jesus packs in not 1, not 2, but 3 unique and powerful illustrations as a means of responding to the loaded question asked of him. Before we can properly understand the illustrations that Jesus leverages in his response, we have to properly understand the question which prompted them in the first place. We're told that some people from the crowd, which was now following Jesus at this point in his ministry, lobbed a question at Jesus, as they've been known to do. "Why aren't your disciples fasting like the disciples of John and the disciples of the Pharisees?" Well, on the surface, it sounds like a relatively innocent question, right? These people over here are sticking to the strict yet fully expected traditional fasts of the Jewish faith and the Jewish culture of their day, while Jesus' disciples are seemingly living large. They're eating and drinking as they see fit. Frankly, if you've ever fasted, whether for medical or spiritual reasons, you know the feeling of seeing others around you enjoying a healthy meal. It's hard to watch. Your stomach growls, your salivary glands start to work overtime. You want whatever it is that they're having, and you want it now. It doesn't only look delicious. To those who are fasting, eating something as simple as a sandwich or even a small snack looks like a grand old feast. It's in this context that Jesus is asked the question, "Why aren't you and your disciples fasting like we are?" The heart of the question isn't about the fast. The heart of the question is about expectations. You don't understand, Jesus. Perhaps you've missed the memo, Jesus. Proper Jewish men and women, those of us who are actually serious about our religion and about our traditions and about our culture, we're fasting. Why aren't you? Jesus, why aren't you doing things as we expect you to do them? It's to this question Jesus responds with 3 images reflecting the nature of his ministry and ultimately his kingdom. He refers to it as a wedding, as a patch applied to a worn-out garment, and then, of course, wineskins. All 3 of these images boil down to a single response. What God is doing through Jesus, it can't fit into the small box of your limited expectations. In the ancient world, much like today, everyone knew what a wedding feast was like. Even if it's been a while since you've attended a wedding, nobody attends a wedding expecting a fast. We all know what we're walking into when we go to a wedding, right? A wedding is a celebration, and no celebration is complete without a feast. When the bride is with the groom, when they're finally together as a married couple, there's a celebration full of eating and drinking and probably an embarrassing amount of dancing. To be clear, while we all know and enjoy weddings today, in the ancient world, a wedding, it wasn't just a celebration that lasted a few hours. This was a celebration that lasted days. It was a multi-day celebration, oftentimes a week-long celebration for the entire community. So Jesus starts there in his response. He's basically saying, well, I'm here. My people are going to celebrate. He was sure to point out that there will soon come a day when they will fast because he won't be physically around anymore, alluding, of course, to his crucifixion and his death. But for now, it's time to party. Jesus is with us. The Messiah is with us. Now's not a time to fast. It's a time to party. That's the first image that Jesus leverages. The second two images, they sort of go together. We have to remember that in the ancient world 2,000 years ago, in ancient Galilee, there wasn't much in the way of quick runs to Target or Walmart to pick up the things you might need. For that reason, the things you own, things like your clothes, things like your household tools, things like that, they needed to last. So when a garment wore out, a patch wasn't just a trendy fashion statement to stand out in a crowd. It was a necessity. And wineskins, these weren't just Dad's old fermentation buckets for those rare occasions when he decides to rekindle his love for home brewing. I know a little bit about that. Wineskins, they were a necessary tool to allow grape juice to properly ferment to the point in which they were reasonably safe to consume. Remember, this is long before modern sanitation. These were both commonplace images. Everyone who heard Jesus speak these words, they all had clothes that needed patching at some point. And everyone knew that new wine couldn't go into those old wineskins without risking a blowout. So Jesus leveraged both of these common experiences and common memories to further explain that not only is it not time to fast and time to celebrate, it's time we stop putting our own personal expectations on God. In other words, to his original audience, Jesus is explaining he didn't come to merely throw a patch on a broken religious system. And you can't just throw Jesus' message of the new covenant into the old wineskins of ancient Jewish traditionalism. God is doing something new through Jesus. And that new thing, it's going to cause some disruption to the way people have always done things. When God first called me to pastor the Hills Church, I was invited to lead what was then a 3-year-old congregation meeting in a high school auditorium. It was a new church plant. The expectations were high. The Hills Church, it was supposed to be the next big suburban church plant in Pittsburgh. But it never quite manifested that way. Some might blame the leadership, some might blame external circumstances, not the least of which was the COVID pandemic. Some might blame a dozen other things. However, today, I look at my church, my extremely unique church that meets in a public park, utilizing public spaces outside for much of the year, and I see a church which has defied every expectation put on her by people because she's undeniably a church that God has built and blessed in powerful ways. My expectations, the expectations of the team which originally planted her, and the expectations of her original congregation are nothing compared to the amazing things God has done through this faithful little church in South Park. And all it took was for all who were involved at the Hills to throw away our personal expectations and trust God in what He was doing through us. So with that, I want to return to my original question for you. What personal expectations are you putting on God? And how might you be limiting the potential blessings God has in store for you when you refuse to walk away from those expectations and simply trust Him? As you ponder that today, I wish you God's richest blessings during this Lenten season. Amen.